Well, that Donald will be in soon. I understand he likes that that impersonation of him, and I do too. Thanks very much, Mr. MacLeod, for that. Katie Halper is writer, host of the Katie Halper Show, co-host of Useful Idiots, which is, to say the least, a tantalizing name, and I'm very glad that she joins us now. Katie, let's start with Donald Trump, if we may. The rhinos in the Congress are defying the Trumpers. I saw Bannon demanding that Mike Johnson must go as the Speaker. It's an annual Christmas tradition to bust the budget of the United States and give large amounts of money away to foreign allies like Ukraine and like Israel. Give us a flavor of how things feel in the US with what, just hardly 4 weeks to go until Donald Trump is back.
Well, I think that Donald Trump is very good at selling an image of being iconoclastic, being someone who breaks with tradition, breaks from status quo. He certainly does that in affect and in rhetoric, but unfortunately, he is not as rebellious and outside of the system as he likes to pretend that he is. And so what we see is he promises that he's going to be anti-war. He promises he's going to go after, the deep state. And of course, that doesn't really happen. He doesn't drain the swamp. We see him work with a lot of warmongers. And so that's what I expect. I think that, Joe Biden was awful in terms of foreign policy. I think Trump will be awful in terms of foreign policy. I don't think that there will be much of a difference. I mean, my only hope is that somehow Netanyahu does something that slights Trump. Trump is so such a snowflake and thin-skinned narcissist that he could actually perhaps be moved politically by some kind of interpersonal fight in a way that I think Biden can't be, because Biden is a dyed-in-the-wool Zionist, as he likes to remind us all the time.
Now, it was revealed undercover, under the table filming of an important official from the White House who revealed, to use his words, he said, Joe Biden is dead. Then he clarified it to say he actually can no longer speak a sentence. In which case, who's calling all these shots in Washington right at this moment? Because there's one hell of a lot of shots being fired.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's probably been brain dead for a long time. And I think this actually speaks to something I was just kind of alluding to with Trump, which is that, these things are so systemic, the way that power works and the way that foreign policy works in the United States, that, presidents in the United States are almost like figureheads. I mean, they do wield a lot of power in some ways, but they're all beholden to the same kind of ultimately neoconservative agenda, whether they're Democrats or they're Republicans. I think what you have with both actually parties is you have a combination of neoconservatism and neoliberalism. You kind of have domestic neoliberalism, and then you have neoconservatism in terms of foreign policy. And sadly, there's not a real significant difference. Bernie Sanders has been very disappointing on many issues, but he still is far and away, I would say, the best that we have in terms of someone who had a remote shot at the presidency. And of course, I've said this from the beginning, it was more likely that he would win the general than he would the primary. I mean, his big enemies included the DNC. And I think we're seeing, with the killing of the healthcare CEO, Luigi Mangioni's killing, the alleged killer, Luigi Mangione, we're seeing how bipartisan the issue of healthcare is. And it's just making it clearer than ever that the Democrats were all too happy to block and thwart someone who actually could have been a leader who united the left and right. Because again, this issue of healthcare is something that really does go across the board politically. And so it's just a shame that we're left with these, two parties run by war criminals.
Speaking of the DNC and the Democratic Party, I saw surely a spoof on social media just before the show that there was some discussion about a Harris-Hillary ticket 4 years from now. Apart from the fact Hillary will probably be over the hill 4 years from now, is Harris seriously going to try and stay in frontline politics in your view?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, Hillary really is kind of like the nightmare that will never go away. I'm hoping that Kamala doesn't take a page from her book. I mean, Kamala Harris is actually kind of more just of like an empty shell, like a husk of a person. Hillary is vile and odious, but she is her own person in some ways. Now that you're asking me to compare those two, but both are awful.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on it, but they will have to. Some presidential hopeful will have to emerge. This is Trump's only term, his final term, so they'll be up against someone quite new next time, whether Vance or someone else. Now's the time to get a candidate in the field early for the Democrats, isn't it?
Yeah, I have no idea who that person would be. I mean, I like Rashida Tlaib, but of course the DNC would never let her come to the fore because she has committed the crime of making it clear. Well, she's committed two crimes. One is she was born Palestinian, which obviously Democrats won't tolerate. And she also has made the mistake of making it clear that she sees Palestinians as human beings. And that's also unacceptable for the Democratic Party.
Now, we'll come to
Sorry
Palestine
if you can hear my dog in the background. My dog is very angry about politics as well.
I'm familiar with your dog. I think he doesn't like me. He barks every time you're on my show.
No, he's encouraging. He's in agreement with you. He's going like this. Yeah.
Oh, really?
His paw.
Okay. Yeah. Now, let's go to Ukraine for a bit. The resort to terrorist outrage against a senior general in the Russian army is the kind of thing that started World War I. The Russians have shown great restraint and forbearance at previous terrorist attacks. Are they likely, do you think, to hold the United States and NATO responsible for this crime? What do you think Russia will do in response to this egregious act in Moscow yesterday?
I'm not sure what Russia will do. I guess the thing that scares me is how happy United States politicians and Western politicians are to saber rattle. I mean, that's what is really scary to me. And you have people, this has been going on for a while, where you have the same people who are saying that Putin is this irrational monster, like a new Hitler. The same people who are saying that also remember Donald Trump to be harder on him. And if he's this irrational guy with a nuclear weapon, don't you want diplomacy? I guess to be fair to their various distortions. I mean, I think that comparing Putin to Hitler is actually kind of almost a form of Holocaust denialism. I mean, I think it's just such an inappropriate comparison and a dangerous one, because the takeaway from that, of course, is that no negotiation, no diplomacy, let's bring on World War III. I think that is very scary. And I think that every time someone makes that comparison between Hitler and Putin, they're doing something very reckless and very dangerous, and honestly bringing us closer to war. But I think that, both parties have become so, there was just an interview with Mitt Romney that Jake Tapper at CNN did, and he was kind of groveling and fawning over Mitt Romney. And, Aaron Mate and I just discussed this on Useful Idiots, the fact that, the Democrats used to make fun of Mitt Romney, right? Like Obama actually once said to him, the 1980s called and they want their foreign policy back. And it seems like the Democrats have now, picked up that phone call, if you will, and given the 1980s their foreign policy back when it comes to Russia and the Cold War. And, one of the things that was so scary was watching how liberals were so upset about Russiagate, which was a big nothing burger, and they really wasted their opposition to Trump, because, of course, the issue with Russiagate is that nobody who didn't already hate Trump cared about Russiagate. It was not only, I think, a stupid thing to talk about in terms of content, but just politically and strategically, it was really stupid.
Now, you were and are one of the terrifically brave Jewish Americans who have been out there on the front line in defense of Palestinian rights for many years. We're looking now at a new Middle East. Netanyahu disappeared today, and then he turned up actually inside Syria for a photo call. A photo call for the ages, to be sure, for Netanyahu to be able to do that. Well, it was worth the trip and worth the secrecy, I have no doubt, to him. In other words, what I'm saying is, militarily, on the ground, Israel has scarcely ever now been more powerful. It has a seemingly unbreakable alliance with the United States, and neither Russia nor China are prepared to contest that seriously in the Middle East. We can, I think, infer that for the foreseeable future at least. On the other hand, as I was just saying, Israel's soft power in the world has never been at a lower ebb. You were in Ireland over the summer. You'll know exactly how much the Irish hate the Jews, i.e. not even remotely. But right. You'll also know how strong the Irish feel about Palestine. What do you make of this apparent dichotomy between Israel's hard power going up and its soft power going down?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You just obviously sarcastically said that Ireland hates Jews, and I'm sure someone's going to clip that and pretend that you were being sincere in that. But I think, you know, Jews like me are often called self-loathing Jews or anti-Semites. We get that all the time. Or if we're not anti-Semites, we're perpetuating or contributing to anti-Semitism. And the irony is, Israel is live streaming a genocide that everyone can see on their phones. And they are misleadingly and dishonestly and criminally saying that they're acting on behalf of Jews and they're acting in the name of Jews. Now, what on earth would create more anti-Semitism than doing that? Now, of course, I want to be clear. There are anti-Semites who have anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that have nothing to do with Israel. They call Jews, you know, like Bolsheviks, communists. Thank you very much, by the way. But, you know, this clearly is not something that makes Jews safer. And Israel loves to pretend that they were founded to make Jews safe. They exist to make Jews safe. And you can't say that the two things at the same time. You can't say that this was the biggest attack. October 7th was the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, which is, by the way, an extremely irresponsible thing to say that really belittles anti-Semitism and Nazism, because as we know, what was done on October 7th was not done because the people occupying Palestine and turning Gaza into an open-air concentration camp are Jewish. The attack was because of the occupation. And these, you know, if the people who were the government of Israel were, you know, I don't know, Greek Orthodox, they would be attacking those people. It has nothing to do with the culture or religion of the occupiers. And I actually want to mention something, George, that I think you'll be interested in, which is that I'm working on a documentary right now, and it follows around Jewish Holocaust survivors all across the world who are speaking out against what Israel is doing. They're speaking out against the genocide in Gaza. They're saying not in our name. They're saying never again means never again for anyone. Never again is now. And they are indignant and outraged, and their hearts are breaking to see how Israel is perpetuating a genocide against people who had nothing to do with the Holocaust. I mean, these people had no role in the attempted extermination of Jews, and of course, the attempted extermination, we should also mention, of other groups, including, for instance, Roma, which they're never included in the official, you know, Holocaust historiography, of course. But I really think that, you know, every time a Jew speaks out against what Israel's doing, they're making the world safer for Jews and, of course, safer for Palestinians. We need to be speaking out constantly. And what Israel is doing against Palestinians, I guess I feel bad, actually. I always try to focus and center what's happening to Palestinians. And they, of course, are the ultimate the ultimate and the immediate victims of this. But I guess since you asked me about being Jewish, I do think the irony is, and this is actually the first time that I've felt any self-interest at stake here. In the past, I've always spoken out against what Israel is doing to Palestinians because it's wrong, it's unethical, because I want to show that, they can't hide behind Jews as human shields. They can't weaponize and trivialize anti-Semitism to enact their genocide. But this is the first time I have to say that I actually feel like it's a question of safety for Jews. Like it's not only the right thing, but we have to show the world that we don't support this genocidal campaign because we can't afford to be seen as complicit in it. And that's what's so dangerous about Zionism. And, it's a scary thing when people conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. It's an obvious way to smear people who care about Palestinian human rights, but it's also an anti-Semitic thing, right? It taps into the dual loyalty trope, which is that Jews are all a monolith and we're actually more loyal to Israel than we are to the countries in which we live. And what's also interesting is that there are two groups of people who like to conflate anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, which basically equates being Jewish with being Zionist. Those people are like raging anti-Semites, right? Who use the word Zionist and Jewish interchangeably, right? The Zionist this, the Jewish this, the Zionist plot, the Jewish plot. And then the other group is Israel supporters and the government of Israel and the ADL and AIPAC. And all these people are happy to sacrifice the safety of Jews for their genocidal political project. And you can see that in how they treat Israeli Jews as well. Look at how they don't negotiate to release hostages. Look at how they killed their own on October 7th, how there was a mass Hannibal. And of course, the Western media is so complicit in this genocide that if you bring up the Hannibal Directive, which of course is the directive to kill soldiers or kill hostages in order to prevent being forced to, God forbid, negotiate with Hamas, if you bring that up, you're calling a conspiracy theorist. But just look at mainstream Israeli media. I'm not even talking about, the more progressive Haaretz. You look at any mainstream to right-wing Israeli media, and they speak with an honesty about the Hannibal Directive that the Western media doesn't. And another thing I really want to bring up is that something that the Western media is so complicit in is the whitewashing of rape and sexual abuse. And it is so shameful. I mean, we hear people like Dana Bash and Jake Tapper talk about the debunked mass rape that was committed, systemic mass rape that was committed on October 7th. And we know there actually was not any systemic mass rape committed on October 7th. But it would be one thing if they talked about that and at the same time acknowledged the documented rape of Palestinians. But the fact that they don't even pretend to care about that, they don't talk about the fact that we know, and again, you can just go to mainstream and right-wing Israeli media, they don't deny it. We know that Palestinians were sexually abused, were raped, were sodomized. And we know not only that, but when Israeli police tried to arrest some of these rapist soldiers, how did the Israelis react? They protested, not against rape. They protested against the attempt to hold rapists to account, the attempt to actually punish rapists. And then what happened next? As if that's not atrocious enough, you actually have a member of the Knesset saying out loud that it is legitimate, and I'm quoting legitimate, to insert sticks into people's rectums. And as if that's not enough, then you had a rabbi bless one of the rapists, and then you had another rapist become like a pop star on TV shows. And then we just learned that this doctor was raped to death. And all of these crimes against humanity and these crimes of sexual violence and the silence about it just shows you the absolute rank hypocrisy that every single person who brings up the mass rape committed on October 7th, and there was no mass rape committed on October 7th, anyone who brings that up and ignores the documented rape is not only, racist, anti-Palestinian, they are actual monsters, and they don't care about people not only being raped, but as we know, there is one doctor, Adnan al-Bursh, a selfless doctor who refused to leave his hospital, stayed with patients, and he was raped to death.
Raped to death. We do live in the time of monsters, but thankfully we have angels on the earth like you, Katie Halper. Thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Very moving, powerful interview that I felt.